Angular Signals RFC just dropped today, so you should go check it out. It's really important. This will determine how all Angular developers use RxJS and Signals and how they code reactivity in the future. This is a big deal. And right now you have the opportunity to go and say your opinion. So a really well thought out and informed opinion might actually make a ton of developers' lives easier. So go check this out. This is a really important time. And I am really looking forward to the future, but it's also in flux. Things are changing. I like this comment from Ben Lesh. So this is on the fourth part of the RFC. This is particularly important, I think, because this is the observable and signal interoperability part of the RFC, and I'm not really convinced that what they have is great right now. So I like this comment from Ben Lesh. He just sort of opened the box on the topic and talked about all kinds of things. And honestly, half of it wasn't interesting to me because it's about like iterables. And I don't know about you, but when I look at code that involves iterators, I just don't care for it. Like I see like callback function, I don't know exactly. This is probably implementation details, but I've never seen. Okay, once and for all, let's check it out real quick. All right, iterators and generators, MDN web docs. Let's have this super zoomed in. So, okay. I don't really care about the details. I want to see the actual code. So what do we have here? Make range iterator. Imperative or non-declarative. Assuming it's going to be set at some later point. Is this implementation? Okay. So I don't like this. So here it is. Every time I've done this, I've scanned through the code and I've looked for code that I like. Whether they're talking about implementation details or examples of how to use it, I haven't seen anything that I want to use. So if there is something I want to use, it's going to be declarative, and I really don't care for anything else. So not there. Using the iterator then looks like this. Imperative. Imperative. Not interested. Not interested at all. This is like if observables sucked. This is what it looks like to me. It generates values. Well, look at generators. I'm not exactly sure what this is, but I don't know what this is until I look at the whole code block. And I mean, you can think of this as a declaration, as one thing, but it's not obvious it is. You could modify this later. Of course, so you could as well if you did const result equals something. You can do push on an array later. But I don't know. In general, it's looser. It's messier. So yeah. Generator functions. Let's see if we have any. Okay, there is. Okay, I think this is implementation detail. Wait, what? Oh, iterables is a thing. Okay, so make range generator. I don't want this. It's low level and it's imperative. Iterables. This is imperative as well because it's defining something across multiple lines of code. I mean, I don't actually mind this that much. I like how simple it looks. I can imagine what it could do, but still, like everything I'm seeing is like imperative, except the const right there. Yeah, like, I don't know. It looks like a way to make like an array. Anyway. User-defined iterables. I mean, that's imperative. I mean, this is really low level. See, I've never seen an example of a feature built with these things. And the little snippets I've seen, none of them look appealing to me. Okay. It just looks like weird syntax for doing things we can already do. Advanced generators. Fibonacci, imperative, imperative. Imperative, imperative. Not interested. Okay, I saw nothing from this that makes me excited to use any of this. On W3 Schools, the site where I learned JavaScript 10 years ago. Imperative code. Iterating over array. Imperative. Homemade iterable. Imperative. Imperative, imperative, imperative. Imperative. I mean, it's right here. And it's right here. That's where the imperative is. But let means like, we're going to change this. You don't know what this is just by looking at one place. So that's imperative. Yeah, it's low level and imperative. Here is javascripttutorial.net. This is imperative, 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 imperative. Okay, let's see if you actually use it. That's imperative. You probably don't have to. But like you probably could just do the array spread and dot next or something, or dot for each or something, but I've never seen that. Imperative, 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 imperative. It's so imperative. So I'm really not interested in anything to do with iteratives. His examples, this is some implementation thing, so it's not what you can judge it by. Your signal can be consumed the following ways. Well, this is async iterator. Imperative. This will be imperative. So yeah, I'm super not interested in this. Anyway, it was a good comment because it explains some more general ways that observables can maybe interop with signals. So you got this R function. Let me look at what that is. Just look at this. Look how much is deprecated on this page. It's crazy. It's like a fourth of the whole API. Although probably some of this has been on here for a while. Well, I couldn't find it in the documentation. Thought maybe it's something like using that isn't really documented, but maybe that is now. But I couldn't find it, so I went in a project and I can't actually find it. So I think it's something he's making up, which is a little confusing. Anyway, so it's just like pipe, but the first thing is going to be a signal. So I guess this would be, well, you're importing it from RxJS. So yeah, I don't know what it is. Anyway, so it's going to return a signal. I think it should just be toSignal, and that you're going to grab it from Angular. And so toSignal, I mean, what are you going to be converting from? Observable, probably. Anyway, so it's simple syntax. You start with a signal, and then you do all your operators, and then you go back to a signal. That would be nice. Okay, and then Alex brought up a bunch of things that are complicated with signal, the differences between signals and observables. Ben said, you're wrong about a couple things. He went into more details, and yeah, this is where he made a big table. Boring, boring, interesting, interesting to me, of course. And yeah, I thought it was funny where he's like, maybe spend more time talking to your old friend Ben. The RxJS team hasn't heard from y'all in years. I still love you despite leaving in 2019. Yeah. Yeah. A little more back and forth, and then not much after this. But he says, basically sums up. Even if it's only safe to read from the signal at specific points in time, if it's only safe to start watching a signal at a specific point in time, even if it's only safe to destroy a watcher within a specific life cycle. Observable is lazy. You can push values asynchronously. It can be done within function and callbacks, and it can be done with observable. So I've wanted like just something better, because let me show you an example. Wow, can't believe they actually made it a Doge meme. That is crazy. All right, so somebody had this example where you've got a signal here, and then you have computed, that's the message, and then what they want is to, wait, this isn't it. Hang on. Okay, I think they just didn't have it implemented because I can't find it. But anyway, so what they want is to count number of changes, so number of state changes. Here's the thing, a state change is an event. It comes from an event. It is an event. The state is state. The change is an event. So when you think about events, you should think about RxJS. You can run effects with signals. So there's probably a way to do this with signals. Let's see if there's a way to do this declarative with signals real quick. And we're assuming this is part of a feature, and we want to display it to the user, not just do it for debugging, because this is fine for debugging. Just using an effect. Well, I'm a noob at this, so I don't know why this isn't working, but basically I'm creating a new signal. This is like a custom hook. This is like use state in React. This is like use effect. Anyway, so you're abstracting this little bit of reactivity away, and you're making this a count. So every time this runs, the effect runs, you're increasing the count. And it's not working for some reason. It starts with the initial 0 thing, but I'm not sure. Not sure why it's not working. I don't know. I'm sure I'll look back at this and be like, of course that wouldn't work. But anyway. So this was what I think about this. When you think about events, you might want to use RxJS. A state change is an event. So this is what that looks like. Name, observable, from signal, name change count, observable pipe, scan, so it's like reduce, increment, and start with 0. And then you go from observable to signal, and now you have a signal of the count. So this is a lot of boilerplate. This matters, this matters, and this matters. None of it, other than that, is anything that you'd want to type unless you had to. So I've been hoping for something a little better than that. This is fine. This is fine. But I want the friction to be as low as possible for using RxJS where it shines, so that you don't overuse signals when you should be using RxJS. So if we're looking up here at his recommended thing, this would be, it would be simple. It would be, I can't edit this comment, and even this would be pointless. Oof, I just kicked it way off anyway. Yeah, syntax highlighting, put spans everywhere. Anyway, but you could imagine R, name, comma, scan, comma, to signal. Okay, so it might be 3 long still. Still, that's not very much text to actually type. It's very, very easy. A little easier. And this isn't bad, but it's a bit. So basically, I just want it to be as easy as possible to use RxJS where it's really great to use it. So Ryan Carniato, he is very interested in seeing where the RxJS signal interop goes with Angular. I'm betting if they come up with something amazing, I bet he copies it in Solid. I hope he does. But that depends on how it goes. So this is a very interesting time. It's kind of critical, and we're deciding what is the role of RxJS, what is the role of signals, because we know signals are really nice for synchronizing state, and we know RxJS is really nice for handling any amount of complexity with event management. So how can we make those work really well together? So he said that if anyone is incentivized to find the right pattern, it will be here with Angular. But remember this? This was a meme that I made for my article where I changed my mind about signals in Angular. I thought before I was convinced that Angular was just trying to run away from RxJS because they were blaming incorrectly RxJS for Angular's decline in popularity, when it was actually the syntax, the integration with RxJS that sucked. And now I see actually there is something inherently annoying with RxJS when it comes to synchronizing state at like the low component level. So I'm not 100% the way I was before, but still, I think there might be an element of this still, that Angular really wants to protect newcomers from RxJS, even when a tiny bit of RxJS would make the code cleaner. I love the introduction of signals in Angular, but I don't love that some perfect use cases for RxJS might not be encouraged if RxJS is still blamed for bad DX. Because what I see with the signals is finally we can have really nice reactivity at the component level. Inputs, you don't have like the diamond problem with inputs firing one at a time and downstream firing multiple times. It's easy to share. It's easy to really handle anything with synchronizing state. Finally, we've got that. And then we have a nice translation layer from RxJS, which handles the more asynchronous and effect-heavy and event-heavy logic. But I think we can be happy now, right? Use signals for what they're good at and use RxJS for what it's good at. But I still think that for some reason, just some bad feeling from the past, that there's a chance that a lot of Angular, I don't know if it's, I don't know who it would be, but I think from a lot of experienced Angular developers, there is a residual feeling that RxJS is a problem. And I feel like that's an unnecessary feeling, because each and every operator from RxJS actually does something. And if you don't use it, you have to code it from scratch. How is that easier? The issue is when you use it for things that it's not good at. So I am worried about it. And Ryan says, the reality is it will get pushed back a bit. Like any simpler list pieces solution, people will take it as far as they can before opting into the more evolved one. And that is the interesting part to me. People will take it as far as they can. My gut is for any chain with less than 4 operators, people will just use signals. Okay, but there are multiple ways of using signals. So I wrote this long comment. Twitter Blue is nice for the... I think it's important to limit the size of your tweets, but it can also be really nice to have room if you need some code snippet. So I really used it here. Anyway, yeah, code isn't good with the Twitter limit. They need better support for code snippets. This is ridiculous. I mean, it looks ugly. But at least I can put it in one tweet. Anyway, I'm worried about syntactic dead ends with signals. Because if you push signals into handling things like async stuff when an RxJS operator already exists for it, you're going to come up with stuff like this. Let's do an effect. It's an async thing. Let's do an effect. We could do RxJS, but we're going to have to type like 3 lines of code. Let's just do an effect, set a timeout, and yeah, now B is delayed to whatever A is, but by a second. Instead, it should be like this, where you create a custom signal operator. That's what I'm going to call these. Signal operators. They call them custom hooks in React. These are signal operators. Similar to RxJS, so it's easy to refactor later. It would look actually pretty similar to this. Pipe, delay time, not delay time, just delay 1 second. And then you have syntax that Ben Lesh suggested. It would look something like this. R, whatever R is. A, delay, and then 2 signal. You know, it'd even be nice if Angular wrapped this, as in we expect this to come back to signals. I don't know. That reminds me of something I made for Quick, but it would be okay. I think, I don't know, to just end up with an observable or to specify this instead of that. Yeah. Anyway, so let's just say that we do this. This isn't too bad. And so this is 2 lines of code and you're using RxJS. Here you have to implement your own delay operator. So I say just use RxJS. And anyway. So the interesting thing is, though, there are 2 ways to try to push signals as far as you can before having to use RxJS. If you do it in the imperative way, it's going to be hard to refactor. So you don't want to do it this way, because that sets the code base down a path that becomes harder to shift to RxJS once it becomes more complex that it could really use RxJS. So what you want is to stay declarative the whole time so that it's easy to move to RxJS if you need to. Okay. Unfortunately, there isn't much of a history of doing this with signals, not even with React hooks, even though they should be. I mean, React query, that's a big deal. That is declarative async code. That is amazing. We need more of that kind of thing in Angular and in Solid.js, because now we're all in this signals boat and it's really, really time to get it right, I think. And yes, it will be pushed as far as it can before having to use RxJS. And at no point will you have to use RxJS. So people will think they can push it further before they realize that they created a mess. So we gotta figure this out. We gotta set better patterns, more declarative patterns for working with signals and pushing them a little further. And what's the future? Are they always going to be not great at handling events? I don't think so. I have come up with a way where signals maybe could do everything that RxJS does. Maybe. Still thinking about it. Maybe RxJS is still better. I haven't thought about errors or completing. But anyway, all the event stuff that you normally think of, like a merge operator. Merge doesn't make sense with states, with signals. What does merge even mean? With events, it just means just filter the event through. It's not the latest one, because when a new thing subscribes to it, it's not going to see it. It's not going to see the last event, so it's not holding on to any event. And then, yeah. So there are a couple of rules that you just need to follow if you're going to do signals with events. Because events can be represented as state. So maybe this is possible, but the thing is you have to be able to ignore the initial event when you subscribe to an event signal. And you can do that by identifying event IDs, and that's like at a global level, because you can have an event cause multiple event streams or event signals to change, and you want all the downstream stuff from them to be able to react to that. But anyway, I'm really getting ahead of myself. let me just show you something I don't like very much. I'm happy that people have created this package, and I want solid.js to get more and more attention. But debounce, this is an asynchronous thing that you're doing to signals. But look at the API they made. Trigger, what? Like what? What do we, and then imperative, like what? Okay, so this is a signal. Okay. Debounce obviously isn't thought of as a relationship between two states. It's thought of as extra behavior that you add before something actually is set. So it's done on the imperative side. So there's really nothing interesting really about this, except that it contains the debounce functionality. But there's a callback right there. Like what? That's the main thing that I noticed. This is a callback function. This is for imperative stuff. Why would you want this? This is barely a utility that adds anything to your code. It just handles basic functionality. You could just write an effect to do this. It doesn't enable a better way of programming. It's just really basic functionality. And then throttle, same thing, callback function. Schedule idle, request idle callback. Call imperative callback function. Another callback function. Create scheduled function, callback function, callback. This is imperative. This is not reactive. This is imperative. So like, what's the point? It's just a little bit of functionality, but it's not enabling a better way of programming. Why aren't we returning something here? Well, this is an effect, but whatever. So anyway, this is what I'm worried about. That, I think developers, synchronous reactivity is difficult for developers beyond the DOM. It's still something we're learning. It surprised me how not well understood solid.js is. I get why Ryan Carniato is so focused on just synchronization, because so many people still don't get it. But a lot of people are getting it, and some people are getting asynchronous reactivity, and they are working to increase the developer experience for asynchronous reactivity. TanStack Query is a really great tool for asynchronous reactivity. But there's just so much that could easily be, and when you create the API that's reactive, developers actually like it. You just have to put it out there and say, hey, use it like this. And then people are like, oh, so you said something. And then on the next line, you react to it. And with this asynchronous relationship, it's so easy, especially with signals when you're doing very basic things like debounce. It's not difficult to understand. It's just, you'd have to be nudged in that direction, and then you get it. Like React Query, it literally is just a wrapper that lets you do declarative async state when you're fetching data or anything async that you're resolving. So people like it. You just have to make sure you put the API there, because people don't really know the nuances, the differences between imperative and declarative so well that they immediately recognize, oh, this is imperative. But the idea is you want to avoid callback functions. Try to avoid callback functions as much as you can, because callback functions are containers of code that is defining stuff out of context. Whether you're calling .set on something or you're just assigning something, the callback function is, to me, it's like a failure to describe something in a self-contained way. It's not declarative. So let me try to connect it in an intuitive way. A callback function is something that borrows functionality and takes it away from where it's most relevant. So the existence of the callback function itself is a problem. Every part of it is something that should have been declared instead. So there are slight exceptions to this that I'm still thinking about, and I'm going to write an article about. I'm in the middle of writing an article about it right now, about the definition of reactivity. But in general, when you create utilities, especially when you have a reactive primitive and people are trying to start to think in this more reactive way, what you want is to extend it in a reactive way as well. So there's so much work that needs to be done right now, both contributing to the RFC and trying to make the interop layer between RxJS, which already has all these beautiful operators defined, and signals, which are really good at handling synchronous state in components. There's so much work that needs to be done to really carefully make that transition between the two worlds as simple as possible. But at the same time, realizing that people are going to try to use signals for more advanced stuff because that's the default. That's where everyone's starting from. That's the lowest common denominator. That is what it is, the primitive of the framework, the change detection primitive for Angular and Solid and other libraries. And to be able to encourage people to extend it in a declarative way not only means that the code is declarative now, it also means that future complexity will easily be able to be implemented using RxJS, which can handle all of it. So there's so much work to be done. Tanstack query needs to be redone in Angular on top of signals. Apparently it was already done, but I don't know why, because we already have RxJS. It should have just been an RxJS operator before, maybe cache map, something like that. I haven't really thought it through totally carefully, but I have no idea what value Tanstack query would have brought to Angular before signals. But with signals, now there is a reason to have an alternative declarative syntax. So signal operators, that's what I'm going to call them, signal operators. They are a big opportunity right now. So there's so much work that needs to be done to make declarative code as easy as possible, both by switching to RxJS and by using signal operators. So I may end up creating a library for signal operators, maybe. If you're interested in helping with that, let me know. But I think this is it's weird to see that some of my ideas have seemingly kind of seeped into some API design around signals. I might be wrong. Maybe some of these things were already decided and I just happen to agree with like most of them when I put my ideas out there. But it's just crazy to me that I could have some kind of influence on, what is it, like 1 million, 2 million developers? It's crazy. And I guess I'm just really passionate about this, so that makes sense that maybe I could be involved. But I think anybody can be involved, and really, really, like, we're at an early stage with all of this. And you can help make this better for so many people. And that will change how people write code It'll change how quickly they can deliver features to users, and it'll make life just more enjoyable for people. Because I've kind of suffered over the last few years with the poor integration with RxJS. That's why that's why the emotions are so strong about all this stuff. It's, typing 20 characters is not a big deal unless you do it thousands of times. Then it's a big deal. So we do the best we can. We try not to be too ambitious so we don't make mistakes. We just try to make solid primitives so that we can not force people to have painful experiences for years. And so this really deserves a lot of thought from a lot of different backgrounds and experiences. And I really hope we get this right. And I hope it's as declarative as possible. Because that's the one thing I know, that imperative code inevitably leads to spaghetti code. Imperative code is spaghetti code. So anyway, yeah. All right, go look at the RFC, contribute, and let's make things more declarative. All right. Bye.